Today we're talking about what to watch and read while you're shut in for a bit. Hello, and welcome to Panelism, the podcast where we talk about the comics and graphic novels worth having on your shelf. I'm Todd A.
And I'm Taylor Trask. And oh my God, it's Todd A.
It's been a while since we've done this. So
yeah.
Oh man, it's just it's like as if this year couldn't have gotten crazier enough. I've had the worst scheduling time forever, and now we are in the midst of a lockdown. I'm already a mostly shut-in remote worker. So
for those of you listening in the future, I hope it's better. We're recording this March 15th in 2020. So right in the middle of COVID-19 and all of that. So hopefully you're listening to this in better times. But if not, hey, we're with you too. We're suffering through it like we all are. And it's been great with you sort of being out of the loop for a little while. I was able to do some fireside chat episodes, which have either come out or will be coming out. We've got a lot of stuff in the can, and I can't wait to share that. So that's been fun to kind of take that road while you've been delayed.
Well, and it's been fun to be I almost said spectator, but I guess just a listener to those, an audience member. So thank you for taking the wheel. It's been very cool to just tune in as a fan.
Yeah, well, it's fun. I mean, I've been talking about getting people on this, other creators and stuff on this show for a while. So it's nice that it's finally.
Yeah. And we just talked about our schedule, so I don't know where this episode lands in our schedule, but either you have just published or will just publish this episode talking to the creators of this indie book, and I'm just so like stoked to hear this conversation. So
yeah, it's interesting.
I have not heard it yet.
I just talked with the two guys who made a wonderful graphic novel called Obscura, and we'll be featuring that in an upcoming episode for sure. So yeah, that was our first international episode. Luke, the writer, was in Australia, and Łukasz was in Poland. So we had to do a little wrangling of the time zones. I got to comfortably sit here at 2 p.m. in Colorado. So I felt bad for them. I was like, man, you guys are troopers doing this, but it was fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, on a slightly serious note, but in a in a positive spirit, we talked about if we are we're keeping some social distancing practices going. What's our playlist look like? Like it's time to knock out that TBR pile or that to be watched queue. And I just sort of raised that to you over text, and you and I quickly put together a bunch of recommendations and thought, hey, let's just talk about that on a podcast. That's a good way to kind of get back into the swing of things. And it's also, this will be an episode you can listen to anytime, because these are, I'm sure, going to be evergreen picks in that sense. And
I would say if you're in the future and you're sick at home with anything, it doesn't matter if it's COVID or whatever, this is probably still a great time. Or if society has collapsed, hey, we're glad you're still here listening. It'll be good. But yeah, you when we talked beforehand too, I actually have my list is actually Pure Play comics and stuff. You've got some other stuff. So how about one from you, one from me?
Well, great. And I hope you and I have not texted about this. So my first pick, I don't know if you have watched or if it's on your radar or anything. So this is back from the old Coffee and Comics days where I just shock you with a pick, or vice versa. Devs on FX and Hulu. Are you watching this show?
Not at all. I've heard about it very, very lightly. So my knowledge of it is not even.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't even know who's in it.
Nick Offerman.
What?
Yeah. And in a role that you've never seen him in before.
You just sold the show to me. Holy crap.
I can't remember the actor's name. I am so sorry. I literally looked it up for this, and I'm scrolling through Hulu, quickly trying to find it. But she was the drummer in Scott Pilgrim. She's another star. And then a couple people that you are very unfamiliar with. Nick Offerman is clearly like the, lead dude.
Not Sonoya Mizuno, is it? I'm looking at the Wikipedia entry right
No.
now. She's Lily Chan.
No.
Okay.
It's like Allison
Kaylee
or something like that.
Spaney?
Maybe I don't know.
Allison Pill. There it is.
It's Allison Pill. That's who it is.
Yeah, there she is here.
Woo. But Nick is like the star of it. There's a couple of character actors that you'll recognize from other things, but largely the protagonists of it are not names that you recognize.
Okay.
It is, and it's Alex Garland. So it is written and a couple of episodes directed by the creator of Ex Machina and the director of Annihilation. So you and I were already sort of like conscripted into the fandom of the show,
Yeah.
I started watching.
How did you find it? How did you?
It just, it was a Hulu recommendation because they were doing a big push this month to talk about how all the FX shows are on Hulu, and it's an FX show. What I did not understand going into it, and it's just bad user error. I looked at it. There's 4 episodes listed, and I was like, oh, cool. They just tell the story in 4 episodes. I'm jumping right in. I'm 2 hours, finished the second episode, and I'm like, holy crap. And then I hit episode 3, and it's like, coming next week, because they are publishing on the broadcast schedule. They just have previews for episode 3 and 4. But by the time we're recording, 3 is out, 4 is like around the corner. And I'm not totally sure if it wraps up in 4. I can see how it might, but I can also see how they go, 6 to 10 episodes total. Who knows? It could. I can't imagine it's like a long series.
Does it have the feel of a miniseries at least? Is that why you're sort of leaning that way? Okay.
It does. It definitely feels like an Alex Garland movie where they've gotten the chance to tell a couple of more in-depth stories about people. Like if you had an Ex Machina where you learned a little bit more about Domhnall Gleeson's character, and because they he does a great job in Ex Machina of getting you into the plot and why Domhnall is put in this remote location with a crazy Jedi guy, but this is okay, you're getting the backstories of these people, and it's it's really lets him work with the pacing and stuff and sort of draw out some of the mysterious elements. In a nutshell, it's about a software company, sort of imagine any faceless software company, Google, Facebook, something like that, that's huge and, omnipresent. And Nick Offerman is the head of that. And he has a very secretive team called Devs that is working on some special quantum computing project.
Is it like a Skunkworks or is it a?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not, unfortunately, it's not it's like a Skunkworks in the fact that nobody within the normal side of the company knows what Devs is working on, but they all know it exists. So it's not like a secret. It has a big enough footprint that people are aware of its existence. It's just no one actually knows what the project is they're working on.
And Nick Offerman is the CEO of this whole thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
In this dirty long hair, Pacific Northwest kind of, flannel shirts and dirty jeans. And he still lives in a little old bungalow house. There's a scene where a security guard is like, you've got more money than, anyone, and you still live in the dirt. Because he's so focused on his mission,
Got it. Well, you've just sold the show to me in a big bad way. Between that and Alex Garland, I'm in.
Yeah, and it follows a mystery and a death, and it's it's creepy in Alex Garland ways, and it's it's I don't know, it's creepy and mysterious and got some really good character study, and I'm get into it. We can pick it apart later, but there's no need to do that in this episode.
No, so I love this. I love this. This is
it
that
was
moment.
So unexpected,
Well, I love this because this is that moment. We actually get to document it in real time. This is the moment when I discover something that could very well be my new favorite thing, which is oh my God, just sort of the pure anticipation of knowing just enough about it to want to see it, but be I don't know, this could be anything. This could be, I could come back in a week and be oh my God, right now is that sort of the hushed pause before the first date. It's just that excitement is palpable. I love it.
It seems like I when I watched the trailer, I was I still thought oh, okay. That literally told me nothing about the show. They had wrapped the trailer in such a mysterious way that you just, You're like, well, I guess I'll watch it.
Yeah. Wow.
But then I was, instantly like hooked into it. So
I've never
what about you?
gleaned any of that from the trailer. Well, I've got four comics or graphic novels that I think when you had texted me about, hey, let's do a coronavirus playlist, I was like, okay. But I wanted to get books that I was both interested in rereading or think that people should read, but also that sort of thematically have to do with the time in which we're living. Could comment on sort of pandemics or societal unrest or just make you feel better. So I really leaned into kind of choices that I think would flesh out, that would just be really appropriate to read during this time. And the first of which is a little series that I've talked about before called Arcadia. It was a limited series, I think of 7 issues total. I'll give you the back of the book pitch for it. When 99% of humankind is wiped out by a pandemic.
Oh, great.
Exactly. 4 billion people are saved by being digitized at the brink of their death and uploaded into Arcadia, a utopian simulation in the cloud. But when Arcadia begins to rapidly deplete the energy resources upon which the handful of survivors in the real world, aka the meat, they call the real people the meat, which they depend, how long will the meat be able to or willing to help Arcadia? And this is the first, there's that. There are some really cool covers I posted on Instagram about a year ago that are just gorgeous, and they all sort of connect together into one giant art piece. But yeah, it is an incredible series. So you have there's a pandemic. They scan everybody, they put them on the server, and there's like a handful of people left in the real world to manage that giant server, but power's running out. And it's like, do we choose to say, to preserve the Arcadian people, or do we choose to preserve real humanity? And it gets really interesting. I think both in terms of the timeliness of it, but also like this could be 20 years from now, very realistically. Like this could, if they figure out how to digitize a brain. I mean, I could see this as a real, actual sort of thing. So it's good to kind of surrender yourself to the story and imagine, like, how would you feel about this if you were scanned, if you weren't scanned? It's just good and interesting and does all the things that comics does well now, with a story like this.
Is it a completed series?
It is. They could, if they ever really wanted to do a follow-up, they could, but this is a very limited series. It's done. Okay. And I think it was meant to be that. It wasn't like it was canceled prematurely. It
right,
very much is a completed piece, and it's from Boom Studios.
Okay. So, and I have two questions. Like I'm fascinated by the idea of reading a story about a pandemic while in the midst of a pandemic.
I know, right?
You don't feel any anxiety from that? Does it give you a positive feeling?
I feel better because you're abstracting yourself from the real world and it's just, that's their problem. That's not really like it. You can kind of escape this world. Strange as it sounds, you can kind of escape this world and like read about a real pandemic that killed half the population, if not more. But just the problem solving and just like, even in the future with technology at a higher level and all this stuff, like there are still knock-on effects, and this idea of like we could save everybody, but at a cost, and just that ties into, but the energy portion of it ties into the climate change side of things too. So there's so much to glean from, and you kind of look at it going, well, at least it's not that bad in our world. You kind of,
right.
As glum as that is to say and to hear, I'm sure it's just, it does sort of give you a sense of proportion and perspective and just some good things to think about.
Well, and what year was it published?
Oh, I knew you'd ask that. I think it was, wait, I have my little library thing pulled up. Give me just a second. By the way, great app to manage your library is libib.com, libib.com. It's free to use unless you're doing some crazy stuff like a library, but I have all my comics, all my books, all my movies, games, everything in there. It's awesome. The app, that's a weird commercial for Libib. The app, you can just scan the barcode and it populates it, or you can hand enter it. It's fantastic for managing all the media. Came out in 2015.
Okay, so yeah, it probably feels really current, but
yeah.
Hopefully removed enough, like it's not it's not of this exact moment. So
no, it definitely projects a future, kind of like I would imagine 2050, 2060, if not not the near future, but it's like you can see the world headed that way given what we've got going on right now, and just our interest in really expanding quantum computing and saving people.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And I also appreciate the Libib endorsement because I use an app called My Library that's very much the same.
Oh.
You scan barcodes, but it's not. It doesn't. There's nothing. It's just very practical. There's nothing that entices me to like get into it and check out what I've got in that library. So
Yeah.
I like checking out new apps like that. And I don't know that this is just in a social distancing shut-in kind of way, but enacted this thing on my Kindle that I never have done before, which is to set a monthly or like a yearly goal, and then it will count for you like how many days in a row you've read and how close you are to finishing that goal.
I didn't know that was a thing on the Kindle. Where do you find that? Just in the settings?
Oh, it's in the app. So
okay.
I don't know that it's on like a Paperwhite, but it's on or paper. That's what it's called, right? Paperwhite.
Yeah, Paperwhite.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw two picks at you at once because they're correlated, I think. I have been trying to get into the show, The Expanse on Amazon for a while. Have you tried this out?
Not at all.
Well,
another new one.
I guess the story is, and I don't even know the network, it's like I've heard it before. So apologies if you're expecting like a completist version of this, but some network had it, canceled it. Amazon picked it up, made a new season. And I've also heard people say, in a casual reviewer sense of like, you got to kind of push through season one. And then it's like all gets connected. So I've tried pushing through season one, and it's one of those shows where it really walks that line between like it's right on the edge of like how cheap can we make a sci-fi show and it still look good.
Great, good.
So there are times where like, especially when you're watching like on Amazon Prime and you're on a laptop or tablet or something, it's not like I don't have a TV situation where I can watch these things in full 4K, but I can still see the like, oh, I wonder if that's like a cheap looking effect, but because it's my laptop, I think, no, it's just my laptop, It's sort of like, it's almost like that sort of BBC kind of sci-fi setting.
Yeah.
It is a story about like there are humans on Earth and there are humans on Mars, and then there are belters who mine the asteroid belt between those two planets. And I don't really know how to describe any more of it because I have watched the first episode 3 times and I've watched the second episode twice.
Okay.
And I am just like, I'm trying to get in that headspace of pushing through it, but Jared Harris is in it.
What?
He's I want to say he's one of the belters, but he's got this crazy like sort of South African accent and like this, he's just a Jared Harris-esque character. And Thomas Jane is in it as sort of a hard-boiled, like, film noir detective in the belt, who's trying to find a missing person. And so the story of these people that are out in space, at least in season 1, who have been stranded and picked up by a Martian squad, it ties into Thomas Jane's mystery. And I don't know how Jared Harris is. It's also one of those where I let it play for a while, and I remember getting into like episode 4 or 5 where Jared Harris shows up, and then I was like, where did he come from? And I had to go back to episode 2 to try to put it all together. So
yeah.
So that's such a mixed endorsement of it, but it does look good, and it has like acting chops like you don't expect in a show like that, because I think it's easy to just dismiss it, and everyone who is into it swears like once it gets going, like it's awesome. And it's very like a gritty, hard sci-fi thing. This is not space fantasy. It's nothing, as cleaned up as Star Trek. And it's also not as like mythical as like Star Wars. This is like the grit and the grime, people mining in space, and very, consequence-driven hard sci-fi. And then
I'm looking at the Wikipedia entry, and it's the cast looks pretty stellar. There's I always usually bristle against diversity for diversity's sake, but in this case, it looks very appropriate for like the story and the setting and everything. By the way, in addition to Jared Harris, freaking Lost alumni Elizabeth Mitchell is in this. That's interesting. And more importantly, one of my favorite actresses, who I don't think I've ever mentioned to you before, I'm going to butcher her name, Shohreh Agdoshlu.
Yes.
You may have seen her in other. You probably have seen her in many things. She's this Iranian,
Yes.
Indian actress who's got a very deep, kind of gravelly voice, and it's just it's really she was in that terrible third X-Men movie. Sadly, I know her mostly from the HBO miniseries House of Saddam. She plays Saddam Hussein's wife, and she's amazing in it. By the way, sort of backdoor pitch for another show, House of Saddam is just unbelievably good in terms of the acting and the execution. But she's in it. She's as good as anybody in that. But just to see her in this, this seems like a very interesting role for her too.
As soon as you said I'm going to butcher her name, I knew exactly who you're talking about in the show.
Yeah.
Agdashlu, the last name.
As soon as you hear her talk, you're like, oh, her.
But yeah.
Exactly. She's got the most distinct voice other than like Clancy Jones of like anybody ever. It's crazy.
Well, and it's especially watching this in parallel with Devs. It's like I can't put my finger on those little things of like, yes, it's a cool way to tell a story where you're keeping certain information from the viewers that's going to get filled in later, but you've really got to get the timing and the effects and the look and everything. Like the pacing of that has to be so tightly controlled so that they're fully bought in by episode 4 whenever it all comes together. And I think that's where The Expanse season 1 is maybe lacking a little bit, is because yes, I've been introduced to all these characters and I'm still like, you mention her and I'm like, I know exactly who she is. And I'm like, well, wait, what role does she actually play?
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah. I know I can see her in the show, but I'm like, but how is she connected to the person that, that's where it falls off the rails to me. And then another backdoor pitch for another Amazon show, Carnival Row, which also has Jared Harris. And sorry, this wasn't on my list, but it's one of those two where I feel like it takes a few episodes to get where you get pulled in, but they do a really great job of the pacing and everything. And like, especially because you're in this totally crazy fantasy world that's like a mix up of sort of steampunk genres. And, that's sort of like a Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes plus, pixies and fairies and what are they called? The pucks, what they call, sorry, my vocabulary slipped, but the satyrs. Living among like, whatever 19th
Normies.
Century English people. It was another one where you're thrust into this crazy world, but by episode 3 or 4 you totally get it all, and The Expanse I think just slips a little bit with that for season 1, so I'm hoping that like if I just sort of get through it, the next 3 seasons will be awesome. And then
hey, quick question about Carnival Row. How does Cara Delevingne hold up? Because she's usually the weak link acting wise in a lot of the stuff she's in. I'm just curious if that's better.
I love her in it.
Great.
Like, I think she is so good. And it's so hard to me because I didn't even, know of her in Suicide Squad when that came out. And then she was in that Valerian movie, which I think you have just got to say, like, Luc Besson just pooched it with that. Like to me, she's actually the strong link versus her like male counterpart. Is that who that is?
Dane DeHaan. Yeah. That's
he's terrible in that movie.
It's bad.
For me, he's so flat and like
she doesn't have much to react against. That's for sure.
Exactly. But it's also like, but they're both just playing on green screens. They don't know what the hell is going on around them. So what a bizarre movie.
We should do a whole like just a DVD commentary for Valerian where we just watch it and just shit on it the whole time. That would be like, I appreciate that.
I would absolutely do that.
I appreciate that. What's the director's name again? Luc what? Besson?
Oh, it's Luc Besson. Yeah.
I appreciate that he had a passion to make that thing. But it's like, there was no Gary Kurtz there to tell him no, to be like, hey, maybe we should make this for audiences and not just your DVD shelf.
It's like unbelievably long.
It's just pointlessly bad. It's just like, everything is a single take. Like, that's it. Like, we don't want to do it again. Nope. Moving on. Okay.
I'll mention when I actually what I actually saw is like the co-star to The Expanse pick is this other pick that my friend Boris had told me about called Counterpart, which is on Amazon, which stars J.K. Simmons, and it's very much like a current day sci-fi take. So I don't know anything about this, but Boris pitched it as like, hey, if you're having trouble getting into The Expanse, this might be more up your alley because you're not having to like
Oh,
wholesale learn a new world and everything. So that's on my playlist, but that's all I can say about it.
I'm so glad you said that because I remember seeing the trailer for Counterpart and going, "Oh my freaking God," but it was like a month
Really?
away. And
Yeah.
I hate when people like give you previews or trailers for shit that's not even in the market yet. I'm like, I'm not going to come back to this. Like, you're asking me to write down on a sticky note somewhere that this will be coming. Just show me the trailer when it's available. Like, that's all you got to do. So I remember seeing this going, I have to watch this. And then I forgot the name and I never remembered to go back and
Oh,
look
okay.
for it. So now, oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm definitely
And it looks like
Counterpart is on my list.
there's 2 seasons of 10
Yeah, season
episodes.
2 just came out. Holy
Okay.
crap.
Okay.
Oh,
So
dude,
maybe
this
that's
is,
why it's sort of top of mind for people. So,
yeah.
yeah. What about you? What's next on your playlist?
Well, hang on. I gotta flag season 1 of Counterpart to my watch list. Jesus, you've saved my week because now it's been gnawing at me. I'm like, what was that show? But I could never
man,
remember. Just kind of faded. All right. My next pick is again sticking with sort of the theme of what we're living in. We got a lot of people who are having to isolate themselves and kind of have to work together for the common good. Well, I've talked about this book many times, but I think what more appropriate series to get into than Postal?
Yeah.
It's a series about a town of criminals in Wyoming, isolated Wyoming, who have to adapt to their new environment and get along to survive. I'll give you the back of the book on this one too, even though we've talked about it in other episodes. The townsfolk of Eden, Wyoming, wake up to their first official murder the town has seen in 25 years. Their reaction to this isn't normal, and there's a reason for that. Eden operates as a haven for the fugitive criminals who remain here while new identities, often including facial reconstruction, are created for them. It goes on from there. And there's like a zero tolerance policy for any illegal activity. So all the criminals have to be good. Otherwise they get kicked out of the town. The town is kind of like a refuge. Like they're essentially, it's almost like a witness relocation program, but for criminals. And they're sent into this town. And they have to kind of live amongst each other. And there's sort of a very ironclad code that they all live under. The woman who's the mayor, her son is the mailman. And he's like a high functioning sociopath, like Sherlock Holmes. And so he's got a lot of detective kind of qualities, and a lot of it's him just solving mysteries and stuff. But at the same time, you get to learn the mythology of the town and how important he is to it, and how his mom might be lying about everything. There's so much about it is wonderful. It concluded, and now they're doing a sequel series to it called Eden, which is about her son after the events of Postal. Postal itself went for I think 8 trade paperback volumes, 7 or 8. Oh, so it's a nice long series, but it looks and feels just like a TV show. Like it feels like you're looking at the actual storyboards for a great HBO TV show or Starz TV show. So definitely it very, very easy read, very compelling read, sucks you in, or at least sucked me in. And it really kind of shows you what's possible with people in, close quarters who, really have to learn to live with each other given their pasts. And just, it's a nice sort of, again, it makes you go, well, at least it's not so bad where we're living. It kind of gives you that.
Yeah. Who would know what it's like to have a sociopath in charge of your town? I'll tell you, there's a great moment to pitch back to your fireside chats. The one you did with Daniel Rojas, where he has not read Postal and you pitch it to him, and hearing his reaction in real time to your pitch was, I thought it was so fun. Like I could just picture his face, like going like, oh my God, why have I slept on this? Like, what? So that was a great moment in there.
It was one of my favorite things to do because that guy is very well read, and he hosts all the book club events at Escape Velocity. Shout out to Escape Velocity. But like, he's very well read. And so when I was able to finally say, have you heard of, and have him not know it? And he and I you may have gleaned from that episode, we have a very similar sort of sensibility for things. So to see that sort of like, kind of in the same way you just delivered Devs to me, I kind of felt like I'm handing him this sort of, this great secret that is now hopefully his favorite thing too. So it was really fun.
Yeah, it was like that whole chat I think is great. His like the way his work comes into like his love of comics and his background, like his just family history, and that was really neat. Like this is just a guy that works in the comic book shop, and just hearing all that. And I love them. It was so like such a great like vicarious moment of he starts his job at this comic book shop and they literally hand him a list and they're like, start reading.
Get going.
If you don't like it, that's okay, but you need to have read this to talk to people who come in our store. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you've got to be this literate to, to have this job. So
He is I'm going to bring him back at some point because he goes
Good.
deep and hard on the on Black Science, which I know you've read too. I would love to have a three-way with him, you and I talking about Black Science, because he will get into some things with Black Science that I think neither of us would have ever thought of. That I'm like, oh my god.
Honestly, that's a fantastic idea, because listening to him talk about it made me want to finish it, because
Right? Yeah.
as you know, like that comic has such a great like tangled history with us, where I was really into it. This is like right when we started doing our podcast. I'm talking about it in every episode, and you were kind of like, I can't get past the art. It's just that style is not like gripping me. And then I get several volumes into it, and I'm like, oh my god, when is, like, they've got to have an end in sight. This has got to wrap up, and I don't see it, and I just stopped reading. And that was like right around the time where you read one for a book club, and then you're like, oh, I'm in now. I got to read this.
Yeah. Well,
We've
and part
both
of that
gone
was just
in and
because
out
of
of it,
his. Part of that was I had sort of accustomed or attuned to the art more. But most of it was just his passionate pitch for that series. Like he sees that in a way that I see. You know, he and I both agree about East of West, but like I'm trying to think of another book that I love as much. Like Black Monday Murders. Like he sees Black Science like I see Black Monday Murders, which is just it's like when you find somebody who's that passionate about something and you weren't yet, you almost want to follow them down that rabbit hole to be like, what am I missing? Like what have you seen that I haven't seen yet? Because I gotta know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Exactly. Well, I've got a totally random poll, which you know about. I have failed to do the minimal amount of research right now, and I can't even tell you what year this book was written. But I have never read anything by Ursula K. Le Guin,
Really?
and started reading this novel that she wrote, which is part of this world she invented called Earthsea. And the very first one is A Wizard of Earthsea. I started reading that at the end of last year. And not that it was hard to push through, but I just have sort of like, I'm just not in a read words type of mood at all, ever.
Yeah.
Which is terrible, because my job is reading and writing words all the time. And, it's that thing. That's what you do all day. It's hard to pick up a Kindle at night and read more words on a screen. Anyway, I've gotten through this book. I really enjoyed it. So it must be from the 60s or something. There's a great, letter from the author. You wouldn't really call it an epilogue, that happens at the end of the book, where she talks about the origins of this. And I read it not understanding exactly that it had been written for young readers. I took everything in the tone of it as being sort of a tone of like, that's a fantasy novel of the 60s, not necessarily like, because so many young reader books now are like full of slang and pop culture and stuff like that. So this just felt very much like reading The Hobbit or something.
Oh, neat. Okay.
But the contrasts with Tolkien, I thought, were so fabulous. Like, I just really loved it, that it did not. It draws on traditional mythic, sorry, I said traditional there, and what I meant to say, like, mythical traditions, certainly with wizards and magic words and, spells and things like that. But it really does not have that emphasis on the like historical pantheons of all that Tolkien did. When Tolkien talks about elves, he's like done the research to like rescue the elves from the, how they were once Nordic and then they got sort of weakened when they went through whatever tradition. And like, he's saying like, no, I'm going to place this back in their original tradition as the keepers of the woods. And, Tolkien's got this whole like historical, effort that he's doing on everything. And Le Guin is just, and I guess in that way, like, I bet this really felt like fresh fantasy at the time.
Yeah.
The magic system is not a system that it's that we're familiar with. It's all about the true names of things. That's how all their magic works, is that everything in the world has a true name. And once you know the true names of things, you can ask those things to do, things for you that no one could expect. You could tell a bird to fly down and land on your arm, when you know its true name. You can have this tree bend over and give you shade when you know its true name, and things like that. And so it's this, it's like very fresh and like, oh, I'm not used to that. I'm used to magic words and magic languages and like arcane language and, wands and, sort of spells that look like lightning and stuff. And it was so easygoing. And it was also one of those things where I realized just by looking at the length of the book, like, oh, this thing that I thought was going to be a sort of side quest that wrapped up is actually, that's the plot of the book. Like, we're just following this, not that it is an easy quest, but like it is just, she's not assaulting you with like a million different roads that the characters are taking, because you don't read it thinking, oh, they're going to wrap that up in the next book or whatever. That seems to be a very modern take on that. It's like there's never just one book. The book comes out and the author's already pitching the trilogy or the quintology or whatever. And even though she did go on to make this a series, it's very much like, hey, this is wrapped up, and that's the story of Ged the wizard, and you're good. Like I thoroughly enjoyed the book and sat down to watch a series that's now available on Amazon, which I think was just a mini series. There's only 2 episodes, called Earthsea, and I can give you a hearty negative recommendation on that.
No, wait, wasn't it longer than that? Because I remember that being on Sci-Fi. Oh, it was a mini series though. You're right. Wow, I could have swore that was because they promoted the hell out of that thing at the time.
Oh, really?
I remember this. This was like early 2000s. Yeah, 2004.
2004.
And that was back when Sci-Fi did its miniseries month in April, which I loved. They would show like all those old Hallmark shows like Merlin and Gulliver's Travels and 10th Kingdom, all that stuff. But like they used that to pitch Earthsea. I remember that coming out. I didn't realize it was a miniseries, but man, I'm looking at it now. I just remember it looked. I mean, it probably suffered from TV of the early 2000s, which was still very cheaply made in a lot of.
And honestly, like the effects, like having recently rewatched most of Excalibur from 81 or whatever that movie is from, it has this corny CGI that looks like the practical effects of 30 years earlier. Or 20 years earlier. So it just felt like, oh boy, what a swing and a miss. But so I would stay away from that.
What's crazy to think about is that we're almost 20 years from when it came out.
I know.
That's so bizarre to think about.
But honestly, the crazy thing about it too is that, like, I bet if this was a Sci-Fi Channel, I didn't know that that this was right when the Lord of the Rings was ending the trilogy.
Yeah, true.
So it's phenomenal to think that like Lord of the Rings was 2001 to 2003.
Yep. 1, 2, 3.
And still holds up, still fantastic, and I can see someone going, "Ooh, we should adapt this other, literary series from the 60s of like classic fantasy," and then really just pooching it. Like, it's just not
I wonder though, given everybody's race to adapt all properties, right. I wonder if somebody doesn't already have it for another go, because it just seems like there's dragons in it, right? That seems like that would be a thing that people would want to adapt for their new streaming service.
And also in the book, like there's a great feeling of like how this is not a dragon you've seen before. Not only is it not Smaug, it's not like a King Arthur kind of dragon or anything like that. Like the dragons in the book are just like, what a cool fantasy take on dragons. Like they're fearsome, but a wizard knows their true names, and this wizard can speak to them with their true name and have a conversation with them.
Hold the presses. So this is worth noting. Studio Ghibli did the Tales from Earthsea as a animated movie.
I wondered about that. So I did see that that's on Amazon. I don't think it's on Prime, but you can rent or buy this series. So I didn't notice it was Studio Ghibli. That's awesome.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. I'm looking at the pictures because I just typed in Earthsea Dragon and you can see it, but it's the Studio Ghibli. Wow.
Now,
all right.
Now, is it not Studio Ghibli? Because that's
it's Ghibli's my cat. Ghibli is the actual. I don't know if that's a hard G or a soft G, but yeah, that's.
I'm sticking with hard G's everywhere because otherwise this will cause people to mispronounce GIFs.
Which is correct. GIFs. I heard that the other day. Somebody was like, send me a GIF. I was like, really?
Well, I'm not. I mean, the wizard in Earthsea is named Ged. I'm not calling him Jed. It starts with a G. It's Ged. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry. What is your next pick?
My next pick. I'll say I have a non-serious one I'll say for the end. So my next one, again, I'm assuming people are going to have a lot of time on their hands over the next couple weeks. And if you've always wanted to delve a little deeper into comics, and especially those books that are a little more challenging or require more time and concentration, this is the time to read Material by Ailish, I can never pronounce his name, Ailish Kott, which came out on Image about 5 years ago. I've talked about it a little bit here and there. It's a limited series. The trade paperback is out, and I highly recommend collecting the individual issues. Their covers are fantastic, very different, interesting graphic art on each of the covers. But the blog line for this one is: America is unwinding. The world is undergoing massive changes. Material is a journey through what it means to be alive today, and it follows 5 or 6 different characters, kind of a lot like, reminded me a lot of the movie Crash. Just with like kind of these characters, you watch them and sort of they intertwine, but they don't, and you kind of get this sort of thematic sense of all their lives in one sitting. And there's a college professor who's grappling with what it means to be human, and AI has found him out and is starting to talk to him. There's an actress in Hollywood. There's so I think there's a divorced woman who's dealing with that. So there's all these people dealing with different problems in their own different ways, and thematically it's just beautifully woven together. It feels much more literary than a normal comic would. And Ailish Kott is great at giving a lot of references to what he's thinking about while he's writing, kind of like Alan Moore. So in the footers of all of the pages are like different things that he was either referencing in the text, or, hey, I was inspired because I saw this crazy French film from the 50s about existentialism, and he put that in there. So just it's all over the place. It gives you more to think about and read. And it's one of those books, I've read it twice, and I'm still not totally sure I can grasp what it's really telling me. There's a lot of ways you can interpret it and take it. And so I would say, given what we're living through right now, and just the need to think about life in a different way, and really use the medium of comics to refine that point of view, I think the Material is a good one to look at. That's my third pick.
Very cool. Sorry for that unneeded sound effect if you heard it. That was me on the Image Comics site looking at Material. Yeah, that sounds awesome. And just visiting the Image Comics site, of course, made me like start drooling over new comics that are out.
Oh my God, I don't know how you've already picked up so much over the last several weeks. It's
terrible. But but no, now you've given me one more to look at. So Material, I don't know that you've ever mentioned that on the show before.
Oh, maybe not.
And I'm sorry if it's slipped my attention, but that I was like, oh, here goes another one, Yeah. Boy, I mean, just the world in which I have enough time to read everything that I find, as well as what people recommend to me, that would be, what a world.
By the way, I just went to imagecomics.com, and holy shit, Jonathan Hickman has got another brand new series that he's just launching. God.
Oh my God, really? I hadn't gone to the homepage. I just searched in.
Decorum #1 just came out. Like, okay. Where does he find the time? Oh, anyway.
Well, I mean, honestly, like, we are living in this golden age of comic books, and we should probably just turn our attention straight to comic books, because there's everything on the Image Comics homepage and their news section I think is worth talking about.
This looks amazing, by the way. I'm marking this for another episode of Panel. Decorum by Jonathan Hickman. I will probably talk about it soon. Holy crap.
Let's do a Image catch up soon, because I've got other things there that I did not put on the stay at home playlist. Did you want me to hit you with another pick?
Yeah, do it.
Okay,
your turn.
This is not fresh. But it is another show that I have never caught up on, and I'm curious to know if you have, which is so I'm like on episode 3 of Legion right now.
Oh, I've seen a few of those episodes.
Oh, okay. So that makes it sound to me like it was not a show that you just insatiably gobbled up, but you did get into it.
I appreciate what it's doing.
Yeah.
It's one of those series that I'm like, there's gonna be a weekend where I'm just gonna watch them all, and it's just gonna hit me at the right time, and I've kind of been saving it for that moment.
And honestly, that's what inspired this episode of our show. And
Yeah.
that's why it's on my list, is because I had been doing the very same thing. It very much like The Expanse. I had watched the first episode, and then when I, went too long before I watched the second one, I went back to watch the first one again, didn't understand it. So now I feel like I'm kind of caught up, and I'm, 3 episodes in, and I'm like, okay, yeah, let me keep watching this. It's been, because of the way it plays with time and memory and what's real to the main character. It's hard for me to binge, in that binging sense of like, I'm kind of doing other things while it's on.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you've got to concentrate, and I find I can only concentrate on it for about one episode.
Okay.
So that I'm curious what other people think, especially because back when it first came out, everyone recommended it to me, and I don't even remember what the deal was at the time. If they were watching it on broadcast TV and I just didn't have it and said I'll wait for it to, hit Hulu or Netflix, but now it's out and there's no excuse, and so I'm getting through it.
Have you gotten to any of the dance sequences yet? Because from what I've witnessed, there's a couple episodes have some just crazy, psychedelic dance sequences that are just, that the whole idea is that what's Charles' son's name, the main character?
I have no idea.
the main guy, the guy who's the.
No, I mean I have no idea.
You haven't watched it? Oh, I
no, I have. I just don't remember his name.
That's right. Hang on.
David.
Thank you. David has these sort of Odyssey of the Mind experiences with either Farouk or whoever the other the devil character is, and like he's kind of shown these things, and sometimes they manifest as dance sequences, and they get really interesting. So isn't it? Oh, you know what? Jermaine Clement is Farouk, right? Am I making all this up?
I have not gotten to any episode with Jermaine Clement for sure.
Hang on, I just gotta make sure I don't mispronounce the name of the. Yeah, he's in it, but what does he play? He plays great radio here.
Yeah. No, I'm doing the same thing. I'm like on Hulu looking for it, but
he's Oliver Bird, but he plays. I may have spoiled that too. He's Oliver Bird on Legion, so whatever that turns into. Okay. Go on, and but yeah. He's one of those actors that it took me. I haven't rewatched Men in Black 3, but I didn't realize he was the main alien bad guy in Men in Black 3 for the longest, for years. Someone's like, well, we were talking about Flight of the Conchords, a friend and I, and he's like, well, he's in Men in Black. I was like, wait, as what? And I had to go back and rewatch it. The guy with the beard and the glasses, like the biker bar looking guy, who's the main bad guy. That's Jermaine Clement too. He sort of blends into all these roles. It's interesting.
I've never seen Men in Black 3. Is that not
Nor
the one
should
with
you.
Tessa Thompson?
No, that's the newer one. This is the one that took him like 5 years to make for some bizarre reason. And it's like Tommy Lee Jones is barely in it because Josh Brolin plays a younger Tommy Lee Jones, and it's not good.
Wow. Wow. Oh, you said you had a somewhat goofy pick for your last pick. I had champing at the bit to hear that.
Yeah, I had 3 very serious, kind of picks that. But I'm like, I need one that's, if you're just in the mood to just completely blank out and just laugh and not pay attention to any of this stuff, I highly recommend. It's not exactly a graphic novel, but it is, because it's a collection of web comics. 5 Very Good Reasons to Punch a Dolphin in the Mouth and Other Useful Guides by Matthew Inman of The Oatmeal. If you remember The Oatmeal, that used to be a lot bigger than it. I think it's, there was a time where The Oatmeal was like one of the most popular things on the internet. The individual web comics were shared quite a lot. And then Matthew Inman really parlayed that into an interesting little empire for himself. And this is one of the first, I think he's put out a bunch of different books of collections of things, but this one's my favorite. I got it as a gift for a birthday a couple years ago, and I just every time I'm feeling like just where you don't want to think too hard about anything, but you want something a little witty and just fun. This is a good one.
That's cool. His empire has turned into a gaming empire.
Has it? I haven't kept up.
Yes. Oh, yes. He's behind Exploding Kittens and has this whole gaming company that made Exploding Kittens, and You've Got Crabs and Throw Burrito, and
I had no idea.
Bears versus Babies. These are all like amazing games. Yeah. I would heartily recommend all of those, but Burrito, which I have not played. I like all of them. They're very fun.
I do wonder what's
gonna. They've actually got a convention happening, Burning Cat, and I'm wondering if it's going to have to get canceled. It's happening in Portland in a couple months, and it's like an unplug and just play stupid tabletop games with your friends kind of weekend.
Nice.
So I wonder what's the consequence of that will be. But I've got another late comer to add to the list, which is Nightly News, which you were very generous to send me a copy of. I don't, there was a store closing, and you wisely grabbed a whole bunch of books there.
Yeah.
But I got that this week, and I'm excited to jump into that as well. So.
Oh, I can't wait for you to both read it and then talk to me about it, because it's one of those books that I think it fits a lot of the stuff that you and I mutually like. It really satisfies all that. But it, again, much like Arcadia, this is a great time to read a book like Nightly News. It's very apropos to the current climate, the distrust of the media, some crazy fringe people acting on their own accord. Like, there's just a lot of it that goes, I could see this playing out, and it's the very first Jonathan Hickman thing ever. He wrote it, illustrated it, and just, it's got that crazy, I shouldn't call it crazy, is not the right word. It's got that very interesting looking art form where he took like photo references and then drew, which some people don't like. I think it's fine. It works perfectly fine, especially in this context when he weaves in all the infographics and everything. It was a book that I picked up my first trip to Portland comic shops, and it was like one of those finds that you just sort of covet forever. Like, I remember the day when I first picked up this book and where I was, and it just kind of had that feel to it for me. So I'm glad you now own it too.
Yeah, I'm excited to read it. I've got, like we've been saying this for a long time, but definitely I think we kicked off the year saying like I could not buy anything this year and still have enough to read every week. For the rest of the year. So
I was joking with somebody. It seems like the one silver lining in this coronavirus situation is that people do have time now to go back and work on their Netflix queues, work on their to be read piles, and just hopefully get a little bit more stuff gone through.
I'll tell you, I went to a nature preserve earlier this morning to take a walk, and it was packed. I have never been there where the entire parking lot is full and it's like overflowing onto the streets, and I'm just walking around like, this is terrible, and there's like a part of me that's like, a little worried about coming into close contact with people even out here, just in nature. But I was like, what a beautiful thing. Like, this is just like all of these people would be in some other indoor social, space doing some sort of commerce or, like social transaction. And they're just all out here in nature. Tons of kids, people riding horses, like joggers, bikers, like just a bunch of couples walking. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
That's beautiful. I love hearing that.
It was like it was really, really beautiful. And it's a beautiful day in Southern California today. And, sun's out, and we've had several days of rain. So that's unusual that we've had that rain. Good. And, good now it's like, oh, wow. It's just like everyone's out in nature. So that, there's a bright side.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, that's a positive note. We should probably end on a positive note. Did you have anything else? Any other picks?
No. That's I think this gives everybody a good start. And if you've watched it or read any of these things that we've mentioned, we'd love to hear from you. And the best place to chat back at us is on our Instagram, which is panelism.inc. The dot is in the name, and it's INK. And that's also our website handle, where you can find all of our podcasts and links where you can subscribe. We're everywhere the podcasts are downloaded, except Spotify. We're just boycotting that because of that last podcast on the left beat.
Yeah, if you're a fan of last podcast on the left, like we are, like they are exclusive to Spotify now, and it's as disruptive as COVID-19. That's the real news, man. LPOTL, they pulled their library from every other feed, so it's like you have to use Spotify, and you have to use the Spotify crappy podcast player, which, if that's all you got, fine, but there's better. There's a rant here.
There's definitely a Tectivus airing of grievances in our future, because I've got so many issues with tech companies and stuff. Maybe after Devs wraps up and we cover some cool comic books, we can get back to that.
Yeah, maybe. That's interesting. We've done that before once, and it was very cathartic. Maybe we should try it again. I forget which episode that was. That was back during the Todd and Taylor show days.
Yeah. We were not as focused.
It was us just bitching about tech for like 45 minutes. It was kind of like, I remember it was informative, but it was just very much like, oh, these guys have a very particular point of view about stuff. All right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's what we deal in all day. But thank goodness we have all the shows we want to watch right now.
That's right. Well, we appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. It's been fun. Glad to have you back in the studio, sir.
Thank you.